Welcome to Food Friends, a podcast inspiring home cooks to try new dishes in the kitchen by sharing trusted recipes, tips, and friendship. Hi, I'm Sonia.
And I'm Carrie. We met in Los Angeles over 15 years ago as personal chefs and haven't stopped talking about food since. We're so glad you're here. Thanks for being our food friend.
If you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode with friends. We love hearing from you, so follow us on Instagram or drop us a line at foodfriendspodcast.com.
Yes, we'd love to hear from you and your food friends. Happy cooking and eating. Hi, Sonia.
Hi, Carrie.
Sonia, it's party time.
Yeah, it's definitely busy fall hosting time. I do think fall inspires us to get together in cozy environments, to host. It's the precursor to the winter holiday season. And for Jewish people, it's actually our peak holiday season. For the next couple months, there's Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Simchat Torah. None of those words may mean anything to you, but if you're Jewish and you're an observant Jew, you're celebrating holidays almost every week.
And I think on the other side too, for someone who's not Jewish and I have a child, there's so many reasons to get together with your kids. I grew up in an environment where we would tailgate or have football parties after football games on Friday nights. There's so many reasons for people to get together before you even hit the big holidays.
Yeah, it really depends where you're coming from. But in any event, even if there's no holiday involved, you might just feel inspired to do some fall hosting. So we've each come up with a few menus that we're planning to cook up this fall, whether it's for a holiday or a tailgate or just a casual dinner party. So I do have to start with something I'm thinking about for Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah, as you know, is my personal favorite holiday of the year. It's the Jewish New Year. It's traditional to eat sweet things, to have apples and honey. You basically are trying to eat things that symbolize sweetness and abundance and all the good things for a great new year ahead. This is like our time, right?
Yeah, I love a Rosh Hashanah dinner because there is such abundance because of this time of year. And there's so much beautiful symbolism in the food. So I'm excited for you to share this menu because I would just make this kind of dinner.
So I always think at Rosh Hashanah, I'm thinking about things that I can make ahead of time. I'm thinking of things that hold well. If it's a salad, like can it sit in the fridge for hours or even for a day? Can it be something that you could make even a week ahead and freeze?
Yes, please.
And reheat, right? Like
Yes.
Those are all the things that are in my mind because typically Rosh Hashanah is actually several days long and there's many, many meals.
Yeah.
And the first meal to me is the most important. And I'm not including every single thing I make on this menu because I also make challah, I also make some other stuff, but I'm going to pick out some new dishes I'm going to try out this year. I like to start with a salad course at Rosh Hashanah. A lot of people do gefilte fish or smoked fish. I always do smoked fish, and I like to serve my smoked fish with some kind of salad. And because there's so many sweet things at Rosh Hashanah, I like my salad to have a strong savory element to it so it's not too sweet, or something that's like really bright and acidic.
Yeah.
I also like having a salad that a vegetarian who's not going to eat the fish can enjoy. These are like all the things going through my head because my table is always filled with different kinds of eaters. So I found this recipe for a crunchy slaw with farro and pecorino. Now, I will say, if you're Jewish, you're probably not mixing meat and milk on the holiday. So I think this recipe, instead of the pecorino, I would add a little bit of mayonnaise to the dressing, and I'll write that in the show notes. I would just skip the pecorino. If you're not observing the laws of keeping kosher, I think this would be very good with the pecorino.
Oh yeah, that's a farro and pecorino. What else is in this salad?
So it's a cup of farro. I really like the Trader Joe's brand because it cooks up quickly. It's like a quicker cooking one, but any farro works. Whole almonds, a cup of pitted dates, a bunch of kale, and also red cabbage. I think about also the beauty of this, the purple of the cabbage and the green, the pops of the toasted nuts, and then the dressing has a bunch of lemon juice, Dijon mustard, garlic, black pepper, olive oil, and pecorino if you're using, or in my case, I would add in some mayonnaise for creaminess like you would in a slaw, but keep it lemon heavy. So I'm starting the dinner off with something bright, but really gets your palate going. And because it's a kale cabbage salad, You can absolutely make this the day ahead of time or the morning of. It's going to taste great. You could keep those nuts separate and add them just before serving to keep their crunch, or you can fold them in and not worry about it.
Well, I think that you make a really important point about the colors of this because I also think this time of year there's just so many beautiful colors. And so putting this salad on your table would be really beautiful. But to your point about being able to make it ahead of time, this to me feels like a great salad for meal prep, or if you were going to a potluck. Maybe I was invited to your Rosh Hashanah if you still lived in my same city, and I could make this salad and bring it to your table.
Yeah, and I think that you've inspired me to outsource more things. So even this Rosh Hashanah, I'm thinking about who could bring what, and I love your suggestion. Okay, the next item on my menu is my main, and it actually comes from the main dish you and I served when we did a pop-up in LA many years ago called the Hunting Party. We gave it a name. We did it with our friend Deborah, and it was this amazing collaboration between the three of us that really also celebrated fall produce and fall ingredients and fall flavors. And I don't know if you remember, Carrie, but for our main dish, we served port and wine braised short ribs.
Ugh, I love a short rib for hosting because you can make it ahead of time. You can really mess around with the sauce if you want it to be tangier or sweeter, and then you just reheat it and it stays really tender and really delicious. And people are impressed by short ribs.
And somehow I totally forgot that I wrote the recipe down and posted it on my old blog. So I can actually link our exact recipe from that event.
Oh my
Of course, we did
gosh.
it in a much bigger amount, but the recipe I've included serves 8 to 10 people, which I think is important when you're hosting something like Rosh Hashanah or a big fall gathering. You might have 8 to 10 people. And if you only were serving 4, this freezes so beautifully. It's worth doing a big batch because it takes a little bit of time in the oven. There were a couple really key things. I won't walk through the entire recipe, but it does include all the things I love for either brisket or short ribs. So I would also say you could swap out the short ribs with brisket if you're a real brisket person. But essentially, you're making an aromatic braise with your classic ingredients like celery and carrot, onion. We also included shallots and garlic. And then the liquid that you're using is going to be a combination of port, which is a sweet dessert wine. And that sweetness is really lovely in a short rib. It's not going to be too syrupy sweet. It's going to be subtle because you're also combining it with a bottle of dry wine, red wine. So it balances out the sweetness, and then also some kind of beef or chicken stock. So it's not pure wine, pure port. It's all very balanced or harmonious. Also with the flavors of rosemary and thyme, which pair so nicely with that wine and port. The thing that Deborah taught us, and I don't know if you remember this, Carrie. So Deborah had at one point worked at Blue Hill at Stone Barns.
Oh, I forgot that. Yes.
Okay. So that's Dan Barber's restaurant. He's a very famous East Coast chef who has done a lot in terms of farming and agriculture. Anyway, Deborah worked for him. I don't know if she learned this there or somewhere else, but she taught me that when you're making short ribs and you want it to taste restaurant quality, what you do is you sear the meat. That's an important step we've talked about before when you're braising. You want to get each piece of short rib truly browned on each side. That's going to add so much flavor to your braise. It's an extra step. It's super worth it. But here's what she does differently. So she braises all the meat and obviously sautés the vegetables. She puts it all in the pot with all the liquids as though she's about to put it in the oven, which is typically what you do. You sear it, you add the vegetables and the liquids, you put it in the oven. Except for instead of putting it in the oven, she puts it in the refrigerator overnight. And she said keeping it in that liquid after it's been browned is this restaurant trick that adds so much extra flavor. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. But when I do, I'm happy I did. And again, this is something you could do a full week in advance, cook it off, and have it in your freezer to reheat on the day that you're serving. Or you could just do this a couple days in advance and keep it in your fridge.
Yeah.
You don't have to put it in your freezer. But yeah, so you store it in that liquid overnight. The next day you braise it. And then you could serve it that same day. Or again, it's usually better if you wait at least another day.
It's always better if you wait another day. I mean, there's so many important tips that you included in this, but thank you for reminding me of Deborah's trick. That's such a great one. And so what I would say for someone who is maybe hosting Rosh Hashanah for the first time, or someone who's thinking about having a dinner party, really the idea of these short ribs is so great because you can do them ahead of time and you can really futz with the sauce and give yourself time and space to do all of that. They're incredibly forgiving. And I think if you really want to try something new, give yourself the time and space to do it. And I think you and I learned how to do these dishes in a trial by fire way. And we worked with another chef like Deborah. You are always discovering these tips that just make your food that much better.
You always learn from your food friends. I remember burning myself really bad searing all those short ribs. I mean, it was like a very memorable experience. And also, I should say, Deborah's last name is Gorman, Deborah Gorman. She created an amazing vegan line of popsicles called Sorbabes. So definitely check them out. They're delicious. And we love Deborah. So the next dish that I want to share, I've been thinking a lot about how to have something that has honey, because honey is this very important Rosh Hashanah ingredient, but that isn't this traditional braised carrot dish. There's a dish called simis, and among Ashkenazi Jews, it's very popular. So it's carrots cooked in honey, and it can be really soft and sometimes a little bland and sometimes a little too sweet. And I've never been a huge fan of it. I'm always trying to make new versions of it that excite me. And I was reminded of this dish that we were making at my deli in the fall during eggplant season. This is eggplant season right now. And what we would do is we would cut up our eggplant and we would deep fry it.
Oh my gosh.
Then toss it with kind of a honey spiced or honey harissa mix. And this deep fried eggplant, and it wasn't battered at the restaurant. It was just deep fried. It was one of our most sensational dishes. Like, I still think about it. And we had a deep fryer, so it made it easier. But this summer, I haven't talked to you about this, but I've been making a lot of little fried eggplants, a lot of times for sabich, which we have talked about.
Yes.
And this recipe, it's an Andalusian recipe, I believe, but it could be from other places too. Anyway, it's called fried eggplant and honey. That's the dish. It is a very famous dish, and it's similar to how I do eggplant for sabich, where you take eggplant and you cut it either into thin rounds or even into almost carrot stick-like shapes, like stick shapes.
Okay.
You coat it lightly in flour, or you could do potato starch if you're gluten-free, or cornstarch. You fry it in a cast iron pan, and then you, at the table, drizzle it with honey. So you could do this fresh, but actually it holds up really well if you fry in advance. At the restaurant, we served this kind of room temperature, not hot. It was like a deli salad. So I just thought this idea of fried eggplant and honey, also if you're vegetarians, it's a little bit more of a substantial dish. If they can't partake in the brisket, then they can have this sort of side that feels really filling and meaty.
They start with that slaw. They start with that really beautiful slaw, and then they have this really sort of meaty. I did not grow up eating a lot of eggplant, but that's how I remember people would describe eggplant. When I was preparing for this conversation with you, I tried so desperately to find a way to put eggplant into one of my menus. I couldn't really get it because I'm still not quite, I don't have as much experience with that vegetable as you do. So I'm really glad you brought this to the table, because I think this time of year, it's so hard to walk through the farmer's market and pass by all those tables of all these different beautiful colored eggplants and not buy them. So this is an easy way.
It's really easy.
Yeah. And if you wanted to do something like, I was gifted a hot honey.
I was just about to say that.
Having that sweet and spicy version would be really delicious.
I completely agree. Okay, for dessert, there's this amazing recipe that's so easy. Carrie, you will love it. You're going to love it for so many reasons. But it was actually developed by my friend Tanaz Sassouni, who is an amazing Persian Jewish cook, and she actually documents Persian Jewish food. She developed a recipe last Rosh Hashanah for King Arthur baking called pistachio cake with pomegranate glaze.
This looks beautiful, right?
It's stunning. It's like that pale pink with those jewels of pistachio to garnish and this lovely golden, slightly greenish cake. But this is what you're going to love. For one, people who are Jewish are going to love that it's dairy-free, because that makes it really easy to keep it kosher at your table. Then it's made in a food processor.
No.
And that's it. Yes. It's almost like putting it all in a blender. So you're adding pistachios, sugar, salt, and orange zest to a food processor, and then you add eggs to that. And there's also only just a cup of flour, and I think a gluten-free flour would absolutely work in the place of the flour. And then you're continuing to just combine everything in the food processor, and then you add it to your cake pan and you bake it. You make a very simple glaze with pomegranate juice and powdered sugar And then you top it with pomegranate seeds after you glaze it. It's stunning. It's easy. To me, this is a winning Rosh Hashanah recipe.
I love that idea. And who isn't going to be excited to see that on a table?
Yeah, and I remember a couple weeks ago I mentioned that pistachio plum cake from the
Yes.
Andy Bargani book, which I also really loved, which also I think came together in a blender or food processor, was
Right.
similarly, I guess this is like a Persian technique. I'm going to link that one too because I think either of these cakes are really fall hosting friendly.
Absolutely. Well, Sonia, I'm going to start with a kind of an opposite kind of menu. It's very, very casual. And my menu is really meant to travel, it's very portable. So, my menu is a Swiss chard slab pie. It's a pie that you bake on a sheet pan. And what's kind of great about it is that you can cut little pieces if you have it at a potluck or you have it at a dinner on a buffet where there's lots of other options. The side that I would bring to a potluck is roasted parsnips with a hazelnut piccata, which is from the Jelena cookbook. The hazelnut piccata, which is basically just hazelnuts and kind of like garlicky croutons, reminded me of you because I always think of you when I think of hazelnuts. And for something sweet, I wanted to bring a cookie because I think bringing a cookie to any kind of gathering that is a single serving, people can just grab it and go, is a great thing to do. So there's something about oats that make me think of fall. And one of my favorite cookies on the planet is this brown butter oatmeal cookie at All Time Restaurant, which is in my city. You can get their oatmeal cookie recipe in their cookbook, but Sally of Sally's Baking Addiction has a pumpkin version, and hers is pumpkin and oatmeal, and it's really soft and chewy. So I can walk us through the recipes a little bit. What's great about this Swiss chard slab pie is that the crust is pretty simple. You make it in your food processor. You add butter, flour, a little bit of salt. They recommend that you add a decent amount of black pepper. When I made this the first time, I know I did not put a lot of black pepper in it because I was taking it to a school cookout where there were a lot of kids. And then the filling is pretty simple. It's olive oil, garlic, onion. There's a little bit of coriander and a little bit of ginger and a little bit of red pepper flakes, so that adds a little bit of flavor. But then there's 3 full pounds of Swiss chard. And you cook that down, you add a little bit of white wine, and then at the end, you stir in some sour cream, which gives it a little bit of heft and a little bit of richness. So you cut your pastry in half, you roll out the bottom crust, you mound all of the Swiss chard on top, you put the top crust on. You just kind of use a fork and seal it all the way around. I really love the rusticness of this tart. And I think if you really wanted the shortcut of a frozen puff pastry like a Dufour, I think you need to buy 2 packages of it. It's a really beautiful thing to bring to somewhere. The little sweet story that I will add to this is that I took this to one of Mac's school events. And this is actually what started my food friendship with my friend Maylin, because she walked up and she said, "Is that a Swiss chard slab pie?" And I was like, oh, this lady gets me. And that is really what started our friendship. And years later, now we cook a lot together. But she actually made this recipe for one of her daughter's birthday parties.
Wow. I do have to say, every time I see a slab pie, I think of you. I really think you excel at slab pies, and I think I need to make them more often because I do love the stunning visuals of a whole sheet pan filled with a pie. I also love the ratio because you know I love galettes
Yes,
and
totally.
crostadas. So it's like a thinner filling than an actual pie because it's flatter. And there's something about that that's so appealing. And this to me is kind of spanakopita adjacent, but also savory greens pie
Yes,
adjacent.
yes.
It has the best of all those worlds. I think you're right about the puff pastry that you could totally do this with 2 packages and that would be a shortcut if you don't want to make your own crust. And I one last thing I have to say is it also reminds me of the hunting party pop-up we did because we served a creamed Swiss chard with our main dish. And I was like, oh, this is so fun that I'm offering short ribs and you're offering Swiss chard. It really is a great fall green. I love it.
So, for my side, when I was a personal chef, I learned how to cook parsnips. If you kind of cut them in a fry shape, and I think I've shared this before, I used to make parsnips and carrots and I would roast them on sheet pans and put a little bit of maple syrup on at the end. That would be a great thing for this too if you didn't want to go through the process of making the piccata. But
By the way, that is something I often make for Rosh Hashanah is roasted parsnips and carrots with maple syrup or honey as a side. It's
yeah.
such a great fall side.
Well, it's pretty because it's white and orange, or if you get the colorful carrots, then you just have this like rainbow on your table. What I loved about this was that it had a little bit more heft to it. The Jelena recipe is a little bit chefy. You're supposed to use garlic bread croutons. I think you could easily sub in panko that was cooked in butter with a little bit of garlic. You throw in a little bit of chili flake just to kind of balance it out. Chop up some hazelnuts, add some lemon zest, and right before you go to serve, put this like crunchy, crumbly topping. It's almost like a savory granola or something on top of your parsnips.
I mean, piccata is a fancy word for a crunchy nut topping.
Yes.
Like, it's a great idea to just have, you can make this ahead of time. You have your hazelnuts, your crumbled croutons, or your whatever you're using in its place, lemon zest, parsley. I love the idea of just having that sitting and ready, and then you're just topping your dish right when you serve it. So it's also very make ahead friendly.
Yes. Then Sonia, having the meal end with these really soft oatmeal cookies that have real pumpkin in them, a little bit of spice. I just think that kind of spells fall. And it's really great when you go to an event like this where there are a lot of people, where people can just kind of help themselves. They don't have to cut a piece of cake.
Yeah, Sally's baking addiction is very reliable for different kinds of cookies. I know that she has a very popular chocolate chip cookie, and I love a pumpkin cookie actually. I think that pumpkin does add a lot of moisture, and then to have those fall spices and also the heartiness of oatmeal, this feels like not just like a good potluck cookie, but just sort of a staple fall cookie that you could serve for so many occasions. So it's such a great suggestion. Okay, so for my next menu, I'm also thinking about the high holiday season, but I'm also thinking like, what could I serve at a dinner party, even if it wasn't a holiday? So hopefully this menu can work for anyone. If you are celebrating one of the high holidays, I'm thinking about this for breakfast. I'm thinking about this for Sukkot. So this is not a meat-centric meal. This is a fish-centric meal. The main is going to be a pomegranate molasses glazed salmon that I serve with herby jeweled rice, a carrot ribbon salad, and end the meal with a cobbler. I'm going to get into a little more detail about each of these. I've been really into carrot salads forever. I know carrot salads aren't your thing. Sometimes I do roasted carrot salads, but often I'm just like grating carrot salads. But it turns out grated and ribbon carrot salads are having this viral moment again on TikTok. They've been having it for a while. You know how I love the TikTok trends.
I know. You really keep me up on these trends.
This has been, to be fair, going around for maybe even a year. It's not a new trend, but it just keeps going. Partly because apparently eating raw carrot salads can balance your hormones, especially for women. So a lot of people are eating it every day for that reason. I'm not a nutritionist, but you can look more into that if that's something that's interesting. But what I love about the viral carrot ribbon salad is it's basically a very easy make ahead salad. And again, I'm thinking about for holidays, what can I do the day ahead of time? Even for hosting, you know, I love to make stuff ahead of time so that on the day, I'm not stressed out in the kitchen. So it's 6 carrots that you take a vegetable peeler and you just make ribbons with your vegetable peeler. And then you make a very simple dressing with toasted sesame oil, rice vinegar, soy sauce, honey, lime juice, and then you can garnish with sesame seeds and chopped cilantro. I like doing chopped mint actually in a carrot salad.
Yeah.
I think tarragon would be good. I think parsley would be good. Any green fresh herb would be good. And if you didn't want to go Asian style, even just lemon and olive oil and salt and pepper and herbs in a carrot salad is kind of all you need. And it's so stunning. And if you use those heirloom rainbow carrots,
the jewel, they look like jewel.
it's so pretty.
Yeah.
So that's the salad. The pomegranate molasses glazed salmon is really similar to what I make with chicken and with even my chicken wings that I love.
Yes.
I just love a pomegranate glaze. And salmon is typically best served fresh. I will say this kind of glazed salmon does reheat well, but also what I like to do when I'm hosting with salmon is have it all ready to go and pop it in the oven while people are enjoying their salad. It only takes usually like 15 minutes to cook. somewhere around there. So you can just have it in the oven and then serve it fresh. And so this works for just like hosting a dinner party. But if you need to make it ahead, just cook it a little under and then just gently reheat it when you're ready to serve. The whole recipe is very simple, but basically you're putting together pomegranate molasses, a little olive oil, lime juice, and a pinch of salt. And then you brush that over the salmon. And they say you can even glaze it overnight. So you could brush your salmon and put it in the fridge overnight and then bake it off.
It removes a step from like the day that you're hosting. It's not a hard step, but it's just taking one thing out of your brain on the day that you're hosting is important.
Right. And then they also have this idea of making little fresh topping for yourself. So while it's cooking, you mix pomegranate seeds with parsley, mint, red onion, and a little bit of olive oil and lime juice again. Bake your salmon, you take it out and you top it with this little fresh pomegranate salad. Pomegranate is so, to me, fall, it's Rosh Hashanah, it's the Jewish high holidays, it's all the things that I just love.
You could also make that topping earlier in the day. And what I love about this too is this could be a weeknight meal, especially if you are going to have someone over. But I think there are so many of these little steps that you can take off of your plate right before you're hosting.
Absolutely. And then I love to serve it with a rice dish. If you were doing a weeknight meal, you could just do simple steamed rice and call it a day. If you were doing entertaining or something more festive, there's this jeweled rice recipe from Adina Sussman that I love, in particular because she adds a ton of dill to the rice. And you know how much I love that. And that also feels a little Persian to me, which pomegranate also feels to me.
Yes.
So I just feel like these flavors work really well.
And the colors together, right? The colors of the pink pomegranate against that green.
Absolutely. So it's essentially making steamed rice and then adding a bunch of things to it.
Oh, wow.
In this case, you're frying up some onion before you make your rice. So you're going to have the fried onion added to your rice. And then you're cooking basmati or jasmine, which I think is so floral and flavorful as rice.
Yeah.
And then you're adding chopped dill, and she says barberries or dried cranberries. So that's going to give it a sour red pop. I love it if you can find barberries. If you can't, even a dried cherry, I think would be good here.
Or currants. Currants would turn those are a little bit sweeter, but it would still be pretty.
Still be beautiful and delicious.
Yeah.
And then toasted pistachios, sliced almonds, lemon zest, and black pepper. So it's not complicated, but it has all of these interesting textures and flavors that go so well with everything else. And then for dessert, I've been really into cobblers for the past few years. It started because my
cobbler?
Don't you love a cobbler?
Yes, I do love a cobbler. And cobblers are really forgiving. They're kind of meant to be this homey dessert. You know, put some ice cream on top of it. It's very inviting.
You could definitely make it in advance. You could serve it warm, or you could serve it room temperature. You could top it with ice cream or whipped cream or whatever you want, or serve it as is. This recipe is originally from Chez Panisse, which I just trust so fully. There are different theories about cobbler. Some people like to do a sort of biscuit topping, and some people like to do more of a cake batter topping. I like both, but for a blackberry cobbler, which is what I would probably serve with this meal, I like a little bit more of a biscuit topping. And the recipe I'm going to share is for blueberries, but I think you could swap any berry, and I would suggest blackberries. And I've used this recipe with blackberries and really loved it. I think blackberries also are a little more tart, and they're also just so good in fall and late summer. And it says fresh berries, but when I've made cobblers, I've used frozen berries.
Work perfectly too.
Completely works. And you're just making a very simple biscuit topping where you take flour and baking powder and butter and heavy cream. And when I've wanted to make this dairy free, I've used non-dairy butter and I've used non-dairy milk, and it's worked just fine as well.
Oh, wow. That's so good to know. I mean, I will say there's also an instinct in me. We tend to get these really late season peaches in California. And so cutting in some of those peaches along with those blackberries, it's like a great combination.
I love that idea.
Yes. So, Sonia, my last menu is really inspired by a reader question that we had a few months ago, a listener question who wrote in a few months ago asking about taking a couple of her favorite roasted chicken recipes and making them into a braise. So Diane had reached out to us and she sent us both of the recipes she was talking about. And this recipe for sweet and spicy roast chicken by Melissa Clark, as I was reading through the recipe, I just thought, this is a great recipe. I definitely want to try this. You take a chicken, you cut it up into the 8 pieces, or you buy it already cut into the 8 pieces, and you marinate it with a bunch of really great flavors like lemon juice, orange juice, grainy mustard, honey, bay leaf, red pepper flakes. You add some onions and dates and carrots and thyme, and you put that all together and marinate it for up to 24 hours. It's like you can do that the day ahead. And then she kind of described how you just pull this out and put it onto baking sheets and put it in your oven, and it all cooks together as well. What's great about it is it also has carrots in it, so you don't really have to make an extra side vegetable. And once it comes out, you garnish it with some herbs. You can use parsley, you can use cilantro, and there's a theme going on in this episode. You also add pistachios to it, which look like these little jewels.
I love this recipe. I actually think this is friendly for reheating too. I mean, I wouldn't make it days in advance. It's so smart for hosting, and it's so stunning.
I will say this is written by Melissa Clark. I really trust her. You know, I'm still a little nervous about making a roast chicken, and so this to me is a great place for me to start. What I would serve with this is a buttery couscous, and there is a Barefoot Contessa recipe I've shared many times. It's toasted pine nuts and shallots and butter. She also calls for currants. What I would do for this recipe is I would omit both the pine nuts and the currants and just do the butter, the shallots. She calls for good chicken stock. This is what I love about Ina is, you use just a few ingredients, but you use the best that you can get. And I also was kind of thinking about Adam Roberts and our conversation with him when I was putting this menu together, because he really made this point about you have people over, make it buttery, make it delicious, make it generous. And so I thought Ina's generous, butter, shallots, couscous with this roasted chicken would be so beautiful. And a really sharp salad would be great here. You mentioned that earlier in this episode. I think you could really use whatever greens you're finding at the farmer's market. I would want to use a very garlicky vinaigrette. I found this video by Ina Garten where she shows you how to mix up a vinaigrette by hand. Also on our Substack, I did the champagne vinaigrette for the Cali style Niçoise. And if you wanted to make that in the blender a couple weeks ahead of time, that is a great vinaigrette. And then for dessert, you know how I love a puff pastry. I found these really great maple apple tartlets that you can serve with ice cream. And the original inspiration for this came from one of the cookbooks that I bought when we were preparing for the hunting party at Bonnie Slotnick in New York City. It was this Eat, Feed, Autumn, Winter by Anne Bramley. And it's these really great little puff pastry tarts that you can serve. You just use this frozen puff pastry, you cut it into little individual squares or individual rectangles. You slice your apple, you lay it over the puff pastry, you add a little bit of cinnamon and sugar, you add a little bit of butter. And if you wanted to get a little fancier, you could add pumpkin pie spice, or you could keep it really simple. And then after you've baked them and they've come out of the oven, you drizzle them with a little bit of maple syrup, serve with ice cream, serve with cinnamon ice cream. You can make it as simple or as fancy as you want to.
I know you weren't going for it, but I actually think this is a really great Rosh Hashanah idea too. Several things here are great for Rosh Hashanah. The apples and maple syrup on puff pastry. I feel like a lot of people do that this time of year, and it's such a good reminder to do it, that it's an easy way to make an impressive dessert. And anything apple and spice is just so instantly fall to me. And then all the other things, having a crisp green salad with a vinaigrette that you even make a week ahead of time, having a delicious roast chicken with a side of couscous. Couscous takes minutes to make.
Yeah.
These are all incredibly friendly for hosting even a casual dinner party, but they're also holiday worthy to me.
Yeah, it feels special.
My biggest takeaway is that you need to fly up and host a bunch of holidays with me this year.
Oh my God, I would love nothing more than that. I would love to be at your Rosh Hashanah table.
Same, I would really love that. Well, until next time.
Until next time, bye.
Bye.
Thanks for being our food friend.
If you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode with friends. We love hearing from you, so follow us on Instagram or drop us a line at foodfriendspodcast.com.
Yes, we'd love to hear from you and your food friends. Happy cooking and eating.